All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Live with Sondra. I'm your host, Sondra Shannon. And today we're talking about something that every leader in the attraction industry eventually faces. How do you elevate your leadership journey from the C suite to the boardroom? But first, I want to thank our sponsor, Gatemaster Technology. For 30 years, Gatemaster has been the trusted partner for attractions across the country, helping them run smarter with all in one point of sale, ticketing, and marketing solutions. If you are in this industry, you know technology isn't just about transactions, it's about creating smoother operations, better guest experiences, and more opportunities to grow. I want to thank Gatemaster for making this conversation today possible. And now, let's get to today's show guest. She's a powerhouse in the world of leadership, governance, and strategy. Naomi Kent is the CEO and founder of the Boardroom Company, where she partners with C suite executives and entrepreneurs to guide them on their path to the boardroom. With over 20 years of global experience, Naomi has mentored senior professionals in building successful board careers and has a track record of shaping outstanding board members and chairs. She's worked across both British and American business cultures, bringing unique insights into governance and advisory practices. One fun thing about Naomi, when she's not shaping leaders, you'll find her in the gym. She's shifted from long distance racing to weightlifting, proving that strength and endurance show up in more ways than one. So please help me today in welcoming Naomi Kent to the show. Naomi, welcome to the show. I'm so thrilled to have you today.
Hi, Sondra, and I like your comments about building strength. I think it was actually that I just got really sore from all the running and the swimming and the biking, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So, but
I
what works for everyone works for everyone, right?
Yeah, well, and I kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit. I know this is not what the show's about, but it piqued my interest. And I love asking because behind every impressive career is usually some sort of grounding ritual. I know going to the gym is also something I love to do, but I'm curious how shifting from weightlifting or from the endurance uh, shifting from racing to lifting weights has influenced your approach to leadership and strategy in your professional life?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are certain elements of sort of character, right, that you have to build when you do endurance. And also, if you're just in any kind of routine, a health routine, right?
Sure,
And I've kind of always been in that routine. I've never sort of well, I've gone in and out depending on an injury or something like that. But
sure.
generally I have always maintained, and I think there's some discipline there. You know, when people go, oh, they look so good, I'm like, that's actually discipline. What you're looking at is
Yes.
discipline, right? And so maybe there's a portion of that I think is very important. And I think there's also an element of doing the hard things that you don't want to do, and doing them because there's a long-term plan, because you don't see any effects from one time in the gym or one long swim or one long run. In fact, you probably feel sore and you're in pain, right? So where's the benefit? Where are you going to see that? And so it's all about the kind of long-term play and thinking about the long-term strategy. And then when you think about endurance sports, if anyone here on the line has done a triathlon or an Ironman, you'll know you have to have a plan, and you have to almost be, because an Ironman is so long, you can't start the race thinking, well, when am I going to finish? You have to sort of start the race going, when am I going to get to the halfway point on the swim, right? Because that's the first step, and you have to kind of give yourself a pat on the back because you got that far, and then you get to the next step and the next step. Because and like in business, if you have a long-term strategy and all you're looking at is the 10-year plan or the 5-year plan, it's going to be a long slog, and you're going to get real bored and really out of shape, right, by the end of it. So I would always set myself, and I still do today, set myself small goals that I can achieve and little feelings of winning, right?
Yeah, no, I can totally appreciate that because that's fitness is something that's really important to me. My husband and I own a couple of fitness companies.
Oh, nice.
He's he's the inventor of the mace bell. I don't know if you've ever seen the steel mace people swing today.
Oh, no, I haven't, but I
Joe
have to look
Rogan
it
talks
up.
about it. Yeah. So he, that's always been like super important to us. But we talk often about how, sports and fitness really are one, I think, like, I saw a statistic, something along the lines of like, sports performance is a key indicator for professional, a key indicator of success for professionals. But also, too, I love what you said about the endurance piece, because I think so many people, not only myself, but also members of our audience that are likely watching, a lot of business is an endurance sport, right? It is just that, what you said about being able to achieve those small wins and stay motivated because you have a 10, 5, 20-year plan that you're working on. So I love that. I love having athletes on the show because I talk about this all the time. I think it's super important. Also, I heard the founder of the Spartan races speak a couple of years ago,
Oh, yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
he talked a lot about how we need to do hard things and how important that is for us
Oh,
as
yeah.
professionals, setting ourselves up. Also, I think it's like you're more likely to be a millionaire than you are to have abs. So
I think that, yeah, wow, that's interesting. But if
yeah,
you have both, I mean, yeah, it's
yeah,
pretty rare. No,
you're
I think you're
winning.
right. I think sports, and even sports for kids, it teaches them that you don't always win, and that you have to put in the work, and then you don't win after putting in all the work. So that's really tough, and I think that's just life, really, in general, right? But
Yeah,
I think that everyone should have a hobby or something they work toward in addition to the job that they have, which pays the bills. Because you're going to have really bad days at work, and you're going to have really slow months and years, maybe even, where there's no promotion, you feel like you're just kind of treading water. But if on the side you're building, I don't know, you're in jujitsu and you're trying to get a a purple belt, or you're a scuba diver and you're trying to get to advanced, or it could be anything. It can be a small win, but
yeah,
you're working on something, you're working on your skills. And then strangely enough, what I've found is it builds networks. So you build network with people that have, the same interest. And that's extremely important. And then you build skills outside. Like you said, you come back to the office and you're like, wow, I just did a really challenging rock climbing event. And, suddenly this email that I need to send doesn't seem that difficult, because I was, fighting for
right,
my life on the edge of a cliff, right?
right.
So you kind of puts life into perspective, and I think it can.
Agreed.
The more crises you have, I think the kind of bar kind of gets lower in terms of your ability to cope with stress. So yeah, I think it's
I
important.
love all of that. I have a saying. I'm like, the days I go to the gym, nothing is harder. There's nothing hard that I have to do, even at work, because I did the hardest thing first, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
so, I mean, I pay for that because, not because I can't work out myself, but mainly because I need that accountability. I actually sometimes laugh. I'm like, I'm afraid of my trainer because
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna get the question marks. Did you do it? And I don't want to let him down, but I don't want to let me down either. So I think that's
Yeah.
also a good part
Yeah.
of this. Well, hey, I could talk about this all day, but I know today's session is about the C-suite to the board and elevating your leadership journey. And I'm really excited about today's conversation, Naomi, because this is such a timely conversation. Because whether you're leading an attraction today or planning your next career chapter, the boardroom represents a new level of impact for many professionals. So I'd love to kind of dive into how our industries
Mm.
professionals can prepare themselves for that.
Yeah, so I'll sort of start out by setting the scene. So, for those of you who are not sure what a board of directors is, I highly recommend just doing some research into it, right? I don't think we have time today to go through all the roles and responsibilities, but it's a fiduciary responsibility. It's a very, very senior level role. You're elected by shareholders. and you are essentially overseeing the leadership team, and you're overseeing governance, you're overseeing compliance, policies, risk, you name it. And in many, many cases, and I think we've seen a couple in the news, and I just posted about the CEO from Nestle who was let go because of some incident internally. The board of directors are making those decisions, right? So they make big decisions in the company about who stays, who leaves, and what the response to a particular incident or crises may be at that level, right? Not small things, but they'll be involved in the big things. So don't take this lightly. This is a very important role. There are lots of things that you can do to really prepare yourself to be on boards. There are, though, different types of boards. And this is where I think everyone gets a little bit tied down, is they think the boards are all like the Nestle board, right? Which is this big group of former CEOs, international, and you're thinking, well, that's not me. I wouldn't be in that room. That's fine. Those are the sort of, the kind of tip of the iceberg, right? That's what you see on the news. What you don't see are all the thousands and hundreds of thousands of companies that have boards of directors, anything from a startup all the way through to a large private company, right? And they all have different requirements. So that's why I say, really, you have to figure out what's the right fit for you. But one of the first things that you can look at is really your background. What types of companies have you worked for? Have they been private equity? Have they been family-owned businesses? Maybe in the entertainment industry, there's maybe a type. Maybe they're owned by investors. You mentioned earlier, Sondra, there's maybe just a couple of publicly traded ones that are really big, and the rest maybe are more family-owned and maybe privately owned. So if you have experience at a high level in some of these companies, these may be a good fit for you. And if you've managed a P&L, so you've been responsible for a P&L in a business, that puts you in a really good position. Now, for those of you saying, well, I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite at the P&L level. I haven't been at one of these companies. I don't really know, or I don't have leadership skills. There are plenty of places to start. So again, write this down, advisory boards. There are hundreds of thousands of advisory boards that are groups of people that advise the CEO. No fiduciary responsibilities, but you do advise the business and the CEO on business matters, whatever that may be. So there are plenty of places to start. And then Sondra, you and I talked about nonprofit boards. If you've never served on a nonprofit board, well, for many reasons, I think it's a great thing to do. Serving your community, civic engagements, giving back, and all of these things are all great things to do. However, there are some really interesting nonprofits that can actually help boost your career as well. So all I'm saying is in order to get experience, it's actually going to be a good thing for you all. You're going to build networks, you're going to build the leadership skills, and you're going to learn things and sit around boardrooms with people asking questions that otherwise you would never be around, right? So I think sure. Just starting your board career and starting early is a good thing. And there are plenty of places to start if you're not at that very high level.
Yeah, and actually that kind of leads me to my next question. What is a clear signal that a professional has reached the point where maybe an advisory board would be beneficial to them?
Well, I was about 35 years old when I joined an advisory board. And I know people who join advisory boards at a much younger age. You don't have to be VP level. You don't have to be executive C-suite level. It depends on the company, of course, right? There are companies that do require you to have maybe a PhD in science, right? There are scientific advisory boards of pharma companies and things like that. So there are specific advisory boards. Now, think about what your subject matter expertise is in. That's a really big one. And think about who out there is interested in understanding and learning more about this area of expertise that I have. Another way of doing this, and I talk about there's two things you should be thinking about, is one is your reputation, and the second is relationships. So take a look around you. Who are you already advising? Who are you already speaking to? Who do you already have some kind of conversation with about their business? And can you make it official, right? I'm going to send out an email tomorrow. If you want to get on my newsletter, it's on my webpage, but I'm going to send out an email tomorrow. It's a real story about a client of mine who he went to a meeting with a friend of his, and his friend was talking about his business and how he's got a couple of issues going. And he said, oh, that's interesting. Have you thought about solving them this way? And then he asked him a few questions. And then the guy at the end of the meeting, this was a lunch or something or a dinner, he said, could you be my advisor? I think you should, he liked what he heard and he wanted more. And he thought, wow, the space of a dinner, I learned so much from this guy. I wonder what else he can teach me, right? And what else he can share with my board. So he's going for the board interview. I'm pretty sure he'll get the role. He has a strong connection into the CEO. It's a private company. But my point is sometimes you have to really think, who's around me? Who do I know? And how can I be helpful to them? Like, how can I showcase the kind of board member, right, that I would be? And often it's advising, it's it's helping them see things a little differently, right?
Yeah, bringing a whole new perspective, maybe, to the business. Well, and just for my own curiosity, and maybe because some of our viewers might be starting from like very zero on this conversation, with regards to like getting on the boards, is this something that people do in tandem with their professional roles, or is this a career switch? Is this or is it an enhancement to what they're already doing? What do you typically see with board members?
Yeah, so a lot of people start serving on boards while they are in executive roles. A lot of people then retire and just serve on board roles. So you do have them both, but my recommendation, and every recommendation from every client I've ever worked with who has retired and then tried to serve on board, is start early.
Yeah.
Do not wait. There's the biggest piece of advice I'll give you. Do not wait until you are 60, 62, and you're getting your retirement. You have your little retirement party, and then you go, right, I'm going to boards, and you're going to be in a lineup of candidates who've got 10 years of board experience, and they will choose them over you every time. So go start early, start young, start small. You don't need to, think huge. Like I said, it could be an advisory board. It could be a small family-owned business, a private company, something like that. And it doesn't. So my advice is start while you're an executive. Some of you may have to notify your companies and let them know. Most companies, and I mean vast majority, are very happy for people to join boards, as long as it is not conflict of interest, right? It's not a competitor or something. But they're very interested in seeing you on a board because you build networks, you build leadership skills, and you might come back to the business with some ideas.
Yeah.
So you go to your board meeting and everyone's talking about how they're leveraging AI. You go, wait a minute, we should be doing that. And so you're bringing these ideas back to your company. So actually, there's a huge amount of benefit. And I would actually, if your company doesn't understand that, I would definitely present that to them, right? To say, hey, this is the value I may be able to bring if I serve on a board. And as long as you're not taking days and days of time off, and you're doing this in your own time, then I think it's fine. And just on the time constraint front, because a lot of people ask me that, you do need to factor in time to prepare for board meetings. The biggest complaint I hear is people who are not prepared for the board meeting. They just sort of show up, right? Okay, what's on the agenda? Let's check it out, right? They've not read anything. They've not done any research. They've not prepared any questions. So you do not want to be that person. What you want to be is someone who's showing up prepared, and it could take a few hours of preparation, right, to look through the numbers and look through the paperwork. But then it can really depend on the business. If it's a startup, you might have a 1 hour call every month or every 2 months. Not a big deal, right? We can all handle that. But then if it's a company going through a huge M&A transaction, I mean, all crises like the pandemic. I remember when a number of my clients were on public company boards and private company boards during the pandemic, like the March into April kind of thing. And, they were just daily calls with the CEO. I mean, you couldn't have a job, right? And if you did, you'd have to decide which one you wanted to do. So there are times when, but very, very rarely, when you would need to step up. But if you have a job, I think there's an understanding there of what's involved.
Yeah, that's awesome. And but that kind of all this information, sorry, I'm just taking it all in.
That's okay. That's all right.
Fascinating to me. But just to kind of piggyback on what you said, and out of my own curiosity, for somebody who is thinking about joining a board, and you've answered the time constraint conversation, but is there like a specific set of skills that they're looking for board members? Is there certain like I say, skills and competencies that someone would need to have to do that? I know that you said if you're already in a C-level position, you're already positioned for this, and you want to get in early so that you understand, you get that experience. You're not competing with that. That makes total sense to me. That you would want to get in early as possible versus waiting until you retire. But when working with companies, or when working at a company and then also being on an advisory board, is there a certain type of board that you would recommend people look with? Should they stay within the same industry? Is it, because I liked what you said about you're going to get information that could actually, you can bring back into your companies and might make you better.
It does, yeah. Well, let me give you the sort of key responsibility. Like what do companies look for, right? What are they looking for? Well, the first thing is strategic oversight. Okay. If any of you have been in strategic planning, thumbs up. If any of you have not, my advice is see how you can get involved in a strategic planning meeting in your firm. Having strategic planning as experience is huge. Now, your role as a board member is not to create the strategic plan, but to oversee the strategic plan of the leadership team of that board, of that company, right? So, but you need to know how to put one together, and you need to understand how it works. Every company is a little different. Whenever I work with clients, they're always like, well, my strategic plan was like this and others were like that. So everyone has a little bit of a different way of doing it. So that's why we bring all these people together, right? You need to also sort of assess the capabilities of the business depending on their objectives. So you could walk into a strategic plan and they say, well, by next year, we want to open 4 more stores. Let's say it's a retail. We want to open 4 more stores. And you might be thinking, well, 3 months ago, we just had a whole conversation around human capital and how tough it was to get people to work in the cities they want to open these real estate. Are we making the right? Have we thought this through? Right? I mean, that's a very basic example, but you get it's all about thinking through the bigger picture. The next piece that you need to be very clued in on is your role as a board member is to choose, hire, and help to hire any CEOs, right? So the CEO role. So you need to ensure that there is a succession plan. So Nestle, right? Nestle, they should have somebody waiting in the sidelines, and they will just pick things up. It could be a board member. I often see that. It could be a COO. It could be a CFO. It could be a head of a division that assumes the role of the CEO. So there is no change, there is no disruption, because business has to go on, right? Things have to be signed off. Things have to be approved, and so on and so forth. So the board's responsibility is to make sure that there is a CEO in place. It is the right CEO, and that they continue to think about succession. The third thing is governance and risk. Governance and risk is so important. I'm not going to go into it. Everyone knows what governance and risk is. Again, do some research, but generally making sure that the business is aligned with policies and performance, and they're not doing anything illegal, right? So governance and risk, big one. And then here's a big one: attributes. So you can have experience, by the way, in industry or not in industry, and I'll come to your industry question in just a moment. But attributes of board members, and actually, if you want, I can share with you, and I can share it in the notes, right, of this meeting afterwards. But attributes of board members are very, very specific. I'll give you a couple of examples. So one of them is humble confidence. So it's not the kind of person who walks in the room and goes, let me tell you all about me and let me talk about me all day, right? And I want to make sure we've got lots of, everybody look at me in a board meeting. They're actually not like that at all. It's a humble confidence. They know who they are. They're very confident in what they can do, but they don't need to scream and yell about their achievements. And this goes for the whole process, not just in the board meeting, but while you're looking for a board role. And I'll talk more about that. Or maybe we can have a part 2, Sondra, because there's a lot to talk about. The other thing is they understand their role. They are not running the company.
Sure.
Now, you can imagine, I'm sure we all know CEOs who just want to run the company, right? Everywhere they go, they want to be the leader. If you're a CEO and you go and join a board, you're not leading the company. So you need to know the difference between your role. And then one other one, which is really good, is courage. Courage to speak up. Imagine everybody is voting yes, and you're like, I'm a no, but I'll just go with everybody else, right? I don't, because I'm afraid to go against the grain. You got to have the courage to say, hey, I'm a no, and this is the reason why, and I want this on record, right? Because you have a fiduciary responsibility, and if your vote, something happens and something as an implication on the company, then you're going to get sued, or at least the company will. You should have some insurance. The company will buy insurance. But anyway, Sondra, your question about industry. When people think about their board career, they often can't start to think differently. They're always thinking about their job, about their own career, their executive career. And you mentioned that a lot of people in your industry, you stay in the industry. It's a niche area. If you know the industry well, then you're gonna just rise in the industry. Try and think differently about your board career. Okay, think about other industries that are similar. They have parallels. So hotel and leisure. I think maybe it crosses over. I don't know.
Yes, for sure.
So hotels, right? So yeah.
Yes.
But what are the industries that make money in the same way, right? So
Right.
a retail aspect, they have an e-commerce aspect, but they also have an entertainment aspect, maybe movie theaters. I don't know. So that would be my thing, is just think a little differently about it. It's not exactly the same.
No, I can totally appreciate that advice, because at the end of the day, I don't know if I mentioned to you, my husband is the number one, actually. He was number one again this month for a business coach for Grant Cardone.
Congratulations.
Grant Cardone. But so if you can't afford Grant Cardone, you get one of his coaches.
Okay.
And what's interesting to me is, one, it's very similar to an advisory position, but a lot of these companies just don't have an advisory board yet. And that's what kind of brings me to one of my next questions, kind of pivoting from being on the board to understanding, can a company identify that it is time, or that it is valuable to them to now have an advisory board? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, I speak to companies all the time about this, and I think if you are any kind of startup, even if you're just a one-person show, you need an advisory board. And guess what? I think everyone needs a personal advisory board, right? Like you need people around you that you really trust, who are going to give you good advice that you can call on anytime. So whether you are not running your own business, you're just in a corporation, I would think about getting yourself a personal advisory board. And then if you are running a business, I would, and by the way, it doesn't have to be formal. You don't have to give people contracts. You don't even have to pay them. You can just say, would you be my mentor, right? Like, I'll call you my advisory board, or I'd like you to be my advisory board. But, until I get to X revenue, I don't have the ability to pay you. I think anyone who's a mentor to you, who likes you, trusts you, and thinks you have a great business, is going to jump at the chance to be kind of around you. So really, it's anytime. And then advisory boards, actually, I see them across small companies, but also across really large companies too. So they can play quite a significant role, where the board of directors is governing the company. So all those things I described, policy, overseeing the CEO, they're the people in the industry that are, or people who have big businesses. but perhaps someone here listening to this call is, has a specific niche area that they focus on, and maybe that company needs advice there, but they don't need a board member to do that, right? They don't need to add people to the board because it's a whole process. So they might take on an advisory board. So, think differently. Another thing is one of my first advisory boards, I just said to the owners of the company, I said, hey, do you have an advisory board? I said, no, we've been thinking about it though. I said, hey, I'll be your first board member. Okay, so it can be quite informal, and you can be the one to promote it and present it to someone, as long as that company is something that you want to get involved in, right?
Yeah, I think I love that you put it in perspective like that. I mean, we at Gatemaster, I've had an advisory board, which is made up of the founder, we have an attorney on the board who is a C-level executive in his current role, and then my husband, because we are still kind of a family business. We say we're family, but many of us are not related, but we've been working together for 30 years. So but I will say this, it has been invaluable to be able to, one, as a CEO of this company, because I love what you said about the quiet confidence in a way, and being able to stand up. I think that part of if I have to think about one of the biggest wins that I've had in my career with regards to how I got into this position was speaking up, which so many women will not do. We know this in from a lot of research about women professionals. And so I really appreciate that, because I think I found myself in that position where I didn't want to speak up, but I know the times that I did, it helped the company avoid certain things that might have been detrimental to the company, because I didn't want to go that direction, or I could see down the chessboard. And so I think what you're saying is it's so important for people to speak up when they're on these boards. If you're just going to be a yes man on the board, why be there? Right.
Right. And I think you have to challenge the leadership team, because you're not there to just look at some paperwork and go, yeah, looks good to me, let's move on. You're there to actually challenge them. And what I mean by that is, you're going to be asking the difficult questions, or sometimes the dumb questions, right? Where you go, okay, help me understand why are we doing it this way, right? And then they go, well, and this has happened many times before. Well, we've just always done it that way, right? But when we do it this way, we can't see a lot of what's actually going on in the business. So sometimes, and that's why boards of directors are actually made up of people from different industries, right? Because they bring a different perspective on it. If you look at the board of Walmart, for example, there isn't a single person on that board from a Walmart competitor. That's not what they want. They want people who are going to come up with new ideas, not bring in the old ideas in, right? So that's another reason. And again, your family board is probably, a lot of these people, they're not in the business every day. So maybe they're out talking to people, looking at things. And so they're seeing completely different things going on in the outside world. And they're bringing that back to your company, and possibly saying, hey, have you thought about doing this? Or have you thought about doing that? Right?
Yeah. And it's important. And I think I really love what you said about asking hard questions, maybe even what seem like dumb questions, because those are the things that get you to think about, especially if you're making a pivot from your objectives, right?
Yes.
You need those other perspectives. I know I have. And it's, like I said, it's been invaluable to have not only the mentorship, because I think that I love how you put that, like you can have a mentor be your board. And I'm a believer that you don't even need to know your mentor if you can just study them sometimes. But it is important, and you have to continue to grow, and you need new ideas. And business is business at the end of the day. Even some of the businesses that we've been coaching through, we mostly work on the revenue strategies on our side. But, it's amazing to me how often we can present an idea that we have seen work over and over again, but it's totally new to them.
Yeah, that's right. Or just the way that you did business. They do it a little differently, right? And I think I like everybody to think about, like I mentioned before, businesses that look similar. What that basically means is do they make money in the same way?
Sure.
So I was talking to someone just earlier today about the board, the Duolingo board. So
Yeah.
Duolingo is that language board,
Yeah.
right? And on the board, there are only two types of people on the board. People from education, like government education, right? Obviously helping to push their products into schools and into different educational divisions, right? And the second group of people, it is people who have a lot of experience in e-commerce, because that is how they make money. So
Yeah.
you've got someone, I think they had someone from Groupon on there, right? Which is a huge e-commerce platform.
Yes.
I don't think you can buy Groupon anywhere else, right? So if you think about that, you'd be a Groupon, you'd be executive at Groupon, you'd never think about Duolingo. So I want everyone here to think a little differently about the types of boards that they may be looking at, and think about how do they make money. That's the big trick.
Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that, because you can see how those skills could transfer into different industries and how that could be beneficial, but also get you these opportunities. And, we were talking earlier pre-show, one of the things I feel like this is where I'm at this point is, and from what you've said, I probably should have started getting on boards much sooner than I have, but
Now's the time, Sondra. You're right
yeah,
here.
yes,
We're gonna
we're
go.
right here. I mean, I feel it's selfishly, this show was like an interesting eye opener for me, because I actually approached a friend who's been a chairman of our organization, one of our largest associations for years, on what does that look like? How do I do this? And so you've also answered so many of those questions. And I know that there's a lot of people in the audience who are in my same position. They're leading companies in this industry, and they've got more to give in terms of, because believe me, I know there's so much more in me to give than just the success and the things that and the objectives that we have here at Gatemaster, although I love what we do, being in this amazing, fun industry. I just did a show this week with another guest who's in the industry, and all we could talk about was how fun this is. So I'm sure you can imagine, we deal with roller coasters.
Let me actually just share something with you, because I've got it up right here.
Sure.
I run a proprietary assessment for everyone who wants to kind of figure out what kind of board they want to join. And in the assessment, there's a number of questions about background and industry and all these other normal things that you would ask. But right at the beginning, I asked the question, why do you want to be on a board? And I would actually, for anyone listening, you need to prepare an answer, a really good answer to that question, because you're going to get asked a lot. Because the minute you say, oh, I'm looking to serve, or I would like to serve on a corporate board, people are going to say, why? Right? So
yeah,
you sort of stumble over that answer, you've already, you're dead, right? So here are some of the reasons why people want to join boards. These are the top reasons, and I have over 300 people who've responded. The top reason is purpose. So they want to give back, and the second is giving back. So they want to give back, but they want to have purpose in what they do. So it's about building companies. It's about helping companies grow. If you grow a company, potentially you create more jobs, right? Or you sell great products, or you change the way people do things in their lives and make their lives better, right? So there's a lot of purpose driven. The other one is obviously a lot of people say that they want to share their experiences. So this is what you were talking about, right? You've been through the bad and the good, and you want to help guide somebody, right, to do the right thing and not the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And then,
and not to interrupt you, but imagine having somebody guide you collapses time.
Yes,
which is what businesses need.
It does, and the other big one, intellectual challenge. So a lot of people know that a board is going to challenge them, and it's going to help them think differently as well. So a board is a challenging role. You're going to hear questions from other people. You're also going to be, there could be a crisis. The Nestle board right now? They must be having round the clock conversations.
Yes.
So this nobody expected this. Did they know? They probably knew before it came out into the news, but so they probably have a plan already laid out, but they've been working hard on that plan for maybe the last couple of months. So these are, you're tested every day as a board member, right? Things happen that you just did not expect, but that's the role. And that's why you have to have that clear head, and not clear head, level kind of head, right? And
Sure.
not react badly in a crisis, but that comes from experience, which is what you were talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I think it just kind of full circle to what we were talking about in the beginning of the show, you know, building that you in business, there's so much grit that you have to have, and determination and dedication, and what did you called it, uh discipline, right?
Yes, back to that.
Back to that, the discipline. So, you know, I so appreciate this conversation. It's been super insightful, Naomi, and I want to thank you for really shedding light on the pathway for C-suites to the boardroom, and for giving our attraction industry leaders just some more tools to think bigger about this professional journey and ways that they can. You know, I love the part about purpose and having more to give, you know, wanting to have a bigger impact. That, to me, that seems like, uh, if you were to ask me, that would be one of the reasons I would want to do that, is because I think businesses are what shape our planet and make it great, make our communities great. They're inventing, we're solving problems. In the case of our attractions industries, we're putting smiles on faces. And, you know, we were talking a little bit about Epic Universe. You're being taken to a whole nother reality, and sometimes you need that, you know, how hard the day-to-day life for some people are. So you're providing that experience to people, you're giving them that reprieve from the day-to-day life, and it's such an important thing. But there are businesses doing all sorts of things, and they need advisement to make sure that they can achieve their objectives. And you know what? One of my mentors always says you can't build an empire with one person. There is no empire
Right.
ever built in the history of mankind that was built by one person. So
Right.
I do want to thank you for being here today. And before I let you go, if there is anybody watching that would like to get in touch with you or could use your help to understand what's next for them or where they should be looking, or all of the things that we talked about, what's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you?
Yeah, just connect with me on LinkedIn. You've also got my website, www.theboardroomco.com, so you can go there. And just some final words, Sondra. Being prepared and positioned to get onto, to be on a board is absolutely essential. I can't stress how it's a tough area to navigate, but if you're prepared and positioned correctly, you can be very successful. And for those of you who are young, thinking, "Ooh, one day I might be on a board," I'd say build your network and build an amazing reputation. Those are the two things that you need to just focus on, and get as much experience, in leadership as possible, and you'll line yourself up pretty nicely for a board role eventually. So,
well, thank you so much again for leaving us with these insights. And I've not done a show like this before, but it's super insightful for me, so I really do appreciate the information today.
You are welcome. Glad it was helpful. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And hey, I might take you up on that part too, because I know that we barely scratched the surface today.
I know. Maybe if people want to hear from one thing that we've talked about, if they want to vote on it, then I'll be happy to dive in a little bit more on something of interest. So.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here and look forward to our next conversation.
Okay. Thanks, Sondra.
Thanks, Naomi. Well, you guys heard it direct from Naomi. If you guys want to vote, those of you watching, send me a message, post in the chats. Let us know, because I know my mind is pretty blown right now with regard to the information that was shared today, but there is so much more. So if there's something else that we can add in a future show to help you understand more about this next phase of your professional career or journey, and if being on a board is something that you want to do, please, reach out to our guests. That's why we have guests like this here, so that you can connect with people who can help you achieve what you want to achieve and get better at what you do. And for businesses, if you don't have a board, I feel like Naomi really gave us a super compelling argument for why businesses do need them. So again, just want to thank Naomi for being here on the show today. I also want to thank our sponsor, Gatemaster, for powering this episode. If you are ready to run your attraction smarter and grow with the right tools, Gatemaster has you covered. So again, thank you for tuning in. And until next time, keep building, keep leading, and keep elevating your journey. We'll see you on the next Live with Sondra.
Yeah, I thought of that too. Like maybe what that this might be a way to